Hello and good evening. My name is Wright Bland, and welcome back. It is the Day 10 summary from me of the trial of Pat King. Today's story includes uh, there was quite a lot of struggle and strife. During the afternoon, I had to go during the lunch break and run and get a new phone because my phone in the morning, as I was taking my notes on it, started to just flashed me with white, and the whole screen was dying, and it's working a little bit again, but there's some very small scratches on it, and as I was writing on this thing, it was just blinding me with all kinds of spastic responses. So I had to deal with that. So during the lunch break, I went down to the Rideau Mall, and I went to and got a different phone, the new phone. So I did that to be able to cover today, and I'm pretty tired, very hungry, so please excuse me if this isn't my best recap. So today we heard from four witnesses. We heard from Danny Bulford, Christine Giraud, who is Janu, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. She's a civilian witness for the defense, and then two Ottawa Police Service constables and a sergeant, one constable, one sergeant, both PLT officers, Sergeant Megan Arbunut and Constable Matthew Bickford. And again, I apologize if this isn't the sharpest summary I've ever done, but let's get right into it. So the morning resumed with former RCMP officer Danny Bulford's testimony. He was in cross-examination with the Crown, and the Crown was basically there was a lot of focus on the word leader. Today was a big day for leader. Leader did a lot of heavy lifting today. And Danny Bulford basically broke it down like this to the Crown, that as he was asked question after question about different things, he said he didn't view Pat King as a leader. He had two brief encounters with him, one earlier in the convoy, one, I believe, the 17th of February, where Pat King ran into the hotel lobby to say that there was a large police enforcement action underway and that Bulford investigated that and wasn't the case. He doesn't follow him on social media, etc. And then the Crown tried to go to things that Danny Bulford testified at the POEC when under question from Paul Champ, who's also the primary litigator, I believe, in the civil suit against the convoy. And in that exchange, the judge pointed out that actually Mr. Champ referred to Mr. King as both an organizer and then a leader. So that was something the judge even noted and caught on to. And in cross, basically the Crown tried to say that Danny had called King a leader, but what he was meaning was more of a person. So it came down to, as we heard in the re-examination, it was a matter of the fact that he didn't have enough time to elaborate on his answer, and that it was a very different environment at the POEC, the Public Order Emergency Commission, than a regular criminal trial. As a police officer for about 15 years, Danny Bulford has a lot of experience testifying in court, and it was not like that. He said the differences were there was more hearsay evidence, there was a time limit, and there was a panel of people questioning him. He expected to actually testify at the POEC for longer than he did. But in any case, he was also asked by the Crown about a website, a Freedom Convoy website. Danny Bulford said he never saw it before. I don't think it was ever mentioned in any of the trials so far, and even the judge said he wasn't aware of the website, but it wouldn't surprise him as everybody has a website these days. However, the defense also added to the Crown during the Crown's cross-examination that this was not something in evidence, so that was something noted to the court. And in this website, apparently there's information of Pat King, and the Crown was trying to ask Danny Bulford if it was Pat King's information, and he said there's a number there. Is that Pat King's number? And then basically he's like, all right, I don't want to say this publicly, but then the Crown read the number on the form. I guess I'm assuming Mr. King has a different number by now. He also said it's next to Mr. Bowder's name, and then Danny almost wanted to say something, but then they moved on to another topic. On re-examination, the defense went back to this and said that, Mr. Bulford, you indicated you wanted to add some context to the website. What was that context? And Danny Bulford indicated that he had very little contact with Pat King during the whole thing, like the two encounters he described, did not follow him on social media, and he had no contact with James Bowder at the time, that there was these different groups doing different things. And back to the topic of leader, and the subject and the title of leader, Danny Bulford testified that he did not consider Pat King a leader of the convoy, that he had a following, that some people followed him. That's the wording he used, more or less. And that the people he would consider the leaders were the people named in the class action, and the people maybe, and again, he emphasized the particularity of using the word leader in this situation. We'll elaborate a little bit further in just a moment, but he described that he would associate those people named in the civil suit, and Pat King is named in the civil suit, but the Board of Freedom Corps, the people who entered the rolls to basically speak on behalf of the protesters and try to make negotiations and deals with the city and so forth, like the good faith agreement from the Tamara Leach and them with Mayor Watson. I believe that was the 12th of February, somewhere around then. Nonetheless, Danny Bulford testified that in this case, the convoy was full of very individual people, and that he never told people what to do, and that he didn't see people telling people what to do, and that a lot of people just made their own decisions. And then he was also asked, I believe, about the specificity of what the word organizer meant to him, because the Crown capitalized on those differences. And or maybe it was during the re-examination, I don't know, busy day, lots of running around. But he testified organizer, there were people who helped facilitate the convoy coming to Ottawa, but again, it was by planning routes and stuff like that, and working with police. But again, he didn't see Pat King as that. He didn't know if Pat King was a road captain or a captain or whatever his role was, and he testified that people were very individual in making their own decisions. So next up, we had the defense's second witness, the first, well, I guess technically the second civilian witness, Miss Christine Janu. She is a resident of downtown Ottawa, Centertown. She visited the convoy at least 5 or 6 times for 6 hours at a time. She was able to work and sleep during the duration of the convoy, and she described the convoy as euphoric. I think her testimony was strong in her chief examination with the defense with Miss Natasha Calvino. She described how the convoy was a euphoric experience, that she saw people getting fed, that she saw the snow being cleared, that the streets were cleaner than they ever were, that crime went down, that there was not enough, as much homeless people begging, that that the regular people she was used to seeing homeless on the street were being taken care of, there was a very positive atmosphere that gave her a lot of hope. She said that she's a university educated woman. She speaks very well. I believe she works as an environmental technician. So she's been working from home actually from before the convoy period for her entire career. She's had that opportunity. She used to work in the market for 15 years selling maple syrup, so she's familiar with the downtown, the commute from where she lives now, just off Bronson, to the center of the Freedom Convoy on Metcalfe and Wellington, or the commute to the Byward Market for her maple syrup job that she had for more than a decade. So she's familiar with the crime, kind of how crime in the city goes a little bit, the homeless problems, the other problems of the downtown, the cleanliness issues and so forth, snow clearing. And she said it was the cleanest it ever was, and most peaceful it ever was during the convoy, that she felt incredibly safe. She saw no violence. And that was the gist of her testimony, I believe. She also has a guardianship of 4 of her nieces and nephews, and at the time she had a partial sort of guardianship during the convoy. Now she has full, but she was going to commute to them to take care of them several days a week at the time, and now she has them full time. But the kids did visit the convoy with her and stayed at least overnight one time, and she said the kids never made any indication to her that they were uncomfortable or couldn't sleep or were bothered by anything. She also testified that she could not hear the horns from her location, that she didn't really start hearing the horns or seeing protesters until she got to around, I think, the Bay area. I think the Crown later clarified that was the Slater area. There's a mall with a food court somewhere around there in a building, I suppose, that is where she started seeing protesters and hearing horns, that the horns were loudest around Metcalfe, the heart of the convoy, Metcalfe and Wellington, and that it was very loud, but she said she saw orange or red earplugs, and that if you looked at somebody you could tell if they were wearing the earplugs, and that there was signage and bins of them around, but she did not personally wear them because she enjoyed the sounds of the horn. Now, on cross-examination, the Crown really dug into her. For example, when she described how the streets were being cleared, she said all streets were being cleared. The Crown laid into her on that, said, you don't know that all streets were being cleared, etc. Or when she said that all homeless people were being fed, the Crown laid into her, said, you don't know how many homeless people are in Ottawa. You don't know that all homeless people were being fed. And so this line of questioning and attack continued. Eventually, defense stuck up and said, when she said the word all, this is unfair to the witness. Objection, this is unfair to the witness, because when the witness said the word all as description for homeless being fed, crime being down, streets being clear, she was talking about the specific streets, those streets that she drew a little map of, a Google map printout that Natasha Calvino presented to her, and that she drew one red color for her walking path and green color for her driving path. The first day of the convoy, she actually drove around Crown. She said it was slow going, but she was able to get in. So the Crown, again, the use of the word all, and the defense tried to say on objection that it's not fair because she was talking about the specific street she was taking. The judge disagreed, said that the Crown could continue. The Crown was pointed in these questions and trying to poke holes, saying you would agree with me that you're not, this is an exaggeration, that it wasn't all. And she said, well, it was the ones that all of them that I saw. So I think she did very good under immense pressure from the Crown's cross. The Crown originally, when Miss Christine Janu came in, the Crown wanted to have her birthday, so the defense asked for her to be excused and argued that she doesn't have access to scope or any of the police resources and so on, and it's unfair to her, puts her at a disadvantage. She has to protect the civilian witnesses more than any others, and the Crown tried to argue that it's their right to know if the witness had a criminal record, so forth, so forward. And then the defense countered that by saying the advanced searches that they now have, thanks to, I think, a recent appeals court decision, well, recent is a relative term, right, is something new. So back and forth, and the judge ultimately agreed not to give the birthday, but to give her age, and I believe she said she was 36. Forgive me if I got that incorrect. Again, I'm so tired and hungry, and I just want to go. I'm done for the day. This has been a long, stressful day, but we need to continue our recap. So the Crown digging in on those things, on the use of the word all, on some other observations, but overall, I think Janu did very well. However, there was another point that I want to discuss and bring up, because Miss Janu apparently appeared on the Jason Levine show a little while ago, some months ago, maybe last year in December 2023, or some months ago at some point, and she discussed being a second-class citizen in Canada during the ordeal that led to the Freedom Convoy and all that, sneaking to Quebec in the trunk of a car. At one point, it's a story she said she'll tell her kids and grandkids, and then she specifically spoke about gun rights and the way that gun rights are being attacked, or her perception of gun rights being attacked in Canada, which I tend to agree with. And she boasted Canada and America as the freest countries in the world, and one of the reasons for that is because people do have the right to bear arms, and that the infringement of those rights in Canada are, she described it as a cultural quote. There's another word that starts with a G. You can fill in the gaps. It starts with GEN. And the Crown also had particular issue with this. So the Crown's the one who found this material from the Levine show, and they said that a crime analyst would download this video and make it a exhibit. But when they presented it in court on their cross to the witness, she spoke very well to Mr. Levine, and to, I believe, also Officer Donald Best, former Toronto Police Detective Donald Best was also on that episode in the corner. I saw him in the box. But Miss Janu, her sentiments about how unbearable it was to live through all that, and how necessary the Freedom Convoy was, and peacefulness and so forward. But it was really her comments about gun rights and cultural what really got the Crown going. And Miss Janu, without missing a beat in court, pulled up the definitions. It's like, the definition of cultural so and such is this according to this dictionary, and I thought that was very sharp, and I thought it was very well. And in fact, I thought it was so good that the Crown seemed a little taken aback by it, but he did probably make some points on the all comment, some exaggerations recognized and so forward. But overall, I think Ms. Janu did very well, and a very well chosen witness to communicate the sentiments of those of us who disagreed with what was happening overall. Then we get into the police witnesses. So now we have, first up, Sergeant Megan Arbuthnut, who is a PLT officer at the Freedom Convoy. On chief examination, now again, I had to miss some of this because I didn't get to court till 2:30. I left to go to to walk to the mall at like 1 something. I had to walk all around the mall, find the store, deal with the store, go to the bank, and then come back. So I was about 30 minutes late. I missed a lot of this. But overall, they were going over observations on different days. What did you see on this day at this place and so forward. And honestly, a lot of the chief doesn't stick in my mind because I'm hungry, I'm tired, and so forward. If you want the details, you can go to my X. I got the most interesting points. There was discussion. I think something that sticks out from chief was the meetings brought up that Sergeant Arbuthnut, or maybe acting Sergeant Arbuthnut, attended on behalf of the OPS with maybe perhaps other PLT or police partners on the 14th and the 15th. The 14th, I believe, was a meeting with Miss Litch and some other convoy people, and then the 15th was a meeting again with maybe Miss Litch and then the legal team of the convoy. So I think I heard the name Keith Wilson, Ava Chipiuk, and then some other people that were meeting at that time. And I might mistake the attendees of each meeting again. I apologize, but what stuck out to me about the meeting on the 15th was messaging the PLT was delivering to all the attendees, I assume including the lawyers, that the convoy was now committing mischief and to leave or be arrested. Now, halfway through that meeting on the 15th, the messaging changed or something like that. There's a note, because these are questions defense is asking the officers, the PLT officers, especially from the PLT log, remember, their compilation of all their messages and stuff. So she's reading entries that these officers have made into the PLT log and asking them questions about it. So that's how the coverage in court is proceeding. If you're having questions about why are they talking about observations on this day or this thing at that time, it's from the PLT logs. So in the PLT log, it mentioned her attendance at this meeting, and at this meeting they were delivering messaging. The messaging was, you're committing mischief, leave or be arrested. And then the messaging apparently changed. They got a call. She said she got a call personally halfway through the meeting. The message has changed now, and she apologized to the people at the meeting for the messaging being changed, and she was told by her chain of command, I assume, that people that there was going to be pamphlets distributed. Something just popped into my mind that's sort of important, and I don't know if it was touched on very much with Danny Bulford, but it was touched on, I think, definitely with Sergeant Arbuthnot on Cross or Chief, I don't remember, but there was this messaging about leaving and people being leaving. I believe on Cross of Danny Bulford, the Crown said, were you aware of anyone during the entire convoy who wanted to leave but couldn't? And I believe Danny Bulford agreed that he was not aware of anyone who wanted to leave but could not. Now we get to Sergeant Megan Arbuthnot. And this is the part I think that really, another part on Chief that really came out, was the fact that she's asked by Miss Calvino, she says to Miss Calvino in Chief that if anyone wanted to leave, they'd be happy to assist. But if they did want to leave, she'd have to escalate that to her chain of command. And we know from previous trials and different things and the political interference of OPS chain of command at that point, because Slowly was out, other people were in, and you know who they are, that when these messages were given and people would communicate through the officers then to the chain of command, because she even testified they needed permission from the chain of command to move. So when they would go to their chain of command, we know that it's very likely, in fact plausible, that there would be sticks thrown in the way, challenges, this can't leave, can't do this, can't do that. Oh man, it's just a mess. And I think the cross of Miss Arbuthnot with the Crown was just wild, and we'll talk about that. I know we're getting to 17 minutes now, and I'm feeling a bit lightheaded and dizzy, but we're going to continue. I'm okay. We're going to get this done here. So Miss Arbuthnot, and I know I'm missing stuff again. If you want my most accurate reporting, go to my Twitter thread. You can find it all there. Sergeant Arbuthnot of the Ottawa Police Service, the third witness of the day, testified about those things and asked about those meetings. And then, of course, the discussion that she was willing to help people move, but then she would have to ask her chain of command. And she testified, people didn't want to leave. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the country was in a very bad place, and that was a very peaceful, legal thing to do and necessary thing to do. But I also don't believe that nobody wanted to leave. I think that people probably did want to leave, at least a few, at least one. So now we get to the cross with Miss Arbuthnot, Sergeant Arbuthnot. This is where it gets crazy, because the Crown, towards the end of her cross, she's given her, her observations. She's brought through things. During Chief, I think it was even, was it Chief? No, it was Cross. She mentions that with the Crown, that a truck, some point in February, some point during the convoy, I guess she was at Rideau, Sussex, because she was mostly on the outside, not mostly in the inside of the downtown. She went to the baseball stadium, the RCGT Park, as it was called, right off of Coventry. She went there a lot. She went to 1500 Bronson at least once. She went to Vars. She went to the Antrim truck stop, I believe. But anyways, on one occasion at Rideau, Sussex, a truck heading westward towards Metcalfe and Wellington, towards the bulk of the convoy westwards, attempted to run her down, which was wild. This was a last-minute insertion. This is just a wild testimony. And that, she identified this vehicle as convoy adjacent because it had Canadian flags. On re-examination, Natasha Calvino put this to Officer Arbuthnot. How did you know it was convoy? And she said, because it had hockey sticks and Canadian flags. And then Miss Calvino put it to her that she didn't get the license plate. Of course, no, she did not, because it was going too quickly. And also she testified about this truck that that no other officer was available at the time to help her. So let me get this straight. A vehicle attempts to commit a violent crime, or this is assault with a deadly weapon. This is a serious incident. against a police officer, and there's not a tactical response. There's not a large-scale mobilization to identify this pickup truck and to arrest the driver for, in frankly, what could be considered in some inferences, attempted murder. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Why was there no police intervention on that vehicle? Why is this something that wasn't brought up at any other point? My goodness. My goodness. So that was the big thing that just popped to me. And then, of course, once the Crown got that out of her, I felt that the Crown's cross kind of changed. There was a smell of, what do you want to call it, blood in the air. And the Crown dug in, and Crown asked her about the horns, and she said, oh, the horns were terrible. The horns were very loud, especially downtown, so very loud. When, earlier Christine Janu for the defense, civilian witness in favor of the convoy, said that the horns were okay. She's not bothered by festivals or loud noises down, and that once you got to Slater or Albert, she couldn't hear it anymore. And I know on cross of Miss Janu, I know we're bouncing back a little bit. The Crown asked her, "Would you like to live at Laurier and such a place?" And she said, "Well, I won't mind because I'm in support." She was, but then the Crown also tried to paint Miss Janu as a participant. She said, "I'm not a participant because I wasn't camping there. I didn't have a truck there. I was a supportive observer, as many other people were. Thousands of other people were." So back to Miss Arbuthnot and her comments about the truck, and then her comments about the horns being overly loud. The Crown asked her, "Did you get headaches?" She said she doesn't remember. And then she said that she wasn't sleeping a lot. And the Crown said, "Oh, because of the noise." What, like she was sleeping downtown? No. And then she says, "No, because of her working a lot." And then she's asked about the fumes, and this is when the Crown really goes in. The Crown's like, "The terrible fumes. Thank goodness," the Crown said, I wasn't subjected to the terrible fumes, the terrible idling, and all that terribleness." And then he mentioned earlier back to the one of the first Crown witness of the case, I believe, or one of the first early ones, the blind woman. I forget her name right now. And she was afraid of trucks because she was blind, and she had to navigate using the sounds and stuff, and it was too loud for her. So there was references back to that to try and maybe draw some contrast for the judge, whose testimony of Miss Janu was fresh in his mind, being a supporter, trying to bring back the memories and solicitation of a negative impression from a resident. So that's something the Crown did. And then the Crown continued in their cross by saying, "Oh, these terrible fumes, describe these terrible fumes to me. Thank goodness I didn't have to smell them," sort of thing. And she said, it was terrible. They didn't have safety equipment to deal with it, and it was just disgusting. That was a lot. That was a lot to process, especially after the truck comments. And then she testified on cross. Sergeant Arbuthnot testified on cross with the Crown that and I know we're running really long here, but we got a lot to cover. And Miss Arbuthnot testified in cross with the Crown about violence and attending violence. She felt she was surrounded on one occasion attending RCGT Park, Coventry Park, and she felt very uncomfortable, not violent, but very uncomfortable, and they had to withdraw. And then on re-examination, defense also brought that up to her about the RCGT situation and said, "Was there any violence done to you?" No, there wasn't. "Was there any violence done to anyone else that you know?" No, there wasn't. "Have you ever experienced that kind of resistance at any other protest?" She said she's been at protests where there's been confrontations, people have been arrested, but she's never been that uncomfortable. Maybe she's that uncomfortable because of her personal biases against the protest or the protest reasons. Maybe, who knows? Who knows? Finally, we move on to the fourth witness of the day, Constable Matthew Bickford, who was also a PLT officer. His chief, we haven't gotten anywhere but chief yet. We're in the chief, and basically he's talking about his observations, his communications with Andrew D., who was a head of road captain identified by, I believe, the OPP to OPS, head of the convoy, talking to him about where to go to RCGT Park, and then commute by LRT to the downtown because it was going to get very difficult for vehicles to get downtown because of the volume of vehicles, or and if anybody individual was going to go to the downtown, to use the Sir George Etienne Parkway to get there, because that's where the Eastern vehicles were being rerouted to get downtown. And then some communications with somebody who identified themselves as the stage manager, I believe Jason something. I don't know if it's Jason Vanderweer, but it says Jason. And I self-identified stage manager who was concerned about two vehicles that had made their way to Metcalfe and Wellington, the heart of the convoy near the stage, that they were moving around large crowds. But when police did attend, Officer Bickford, that the vehicles were not attended, that they were off, and that there was no one around, so there's no immediate safety concerns. Apparently, also Jason reported concerns about one of the trucks being in harbor, so he's concerned about tools in the vehicle and also alcohol or so forward that was found maybe. And that there was a plan maybe from police to move the vehicles early the next morning after that was being reported. I don't know. I think that was late January, early February, maybe February 3rd or 1st. I'm not too sure. Again, very long video, guys. Sorry for this. So for the last of the Bickford testimony, we had the point about, let me try to remember this. So there was a comment about the truck, and I remember Officer Bickford making the comment that he believed that Jason was complaining about these vehicles because they were stopping people from having a good time, but there was no immediate safety concern, and that he speculated in the PLT log, that is Constable Matthew Bickford, that these vehicles gained access to the area via Spark Street because there was police barricades everywhere else. All right, we'll wrap it up there for today, guys. Thank you for this enduring this long episode. If you like the video, please like the video, share it with your friends who are interested in this, and you need to be informed about what's happening in our country, in our great country of Canada, and the tribulations those who stood up are still going through. So please share this, subscribe if you haven't already, and like the video. I'll see you next time. Leave me a comment, tell me what you're thinking. If you have any questions, leave it down below. I'll try to get back to you. From Ottawa, I'm Right Blend.